Hello everyone, my name is Nick, and today we're going to go over my personal picks for the best bathroom plants. One of the most frequently asked questions at the plant shop where I work is what plant would be best for my bathroom, so I figured why not do an entire video devoted to that topic. I think it goes without saying that unless you have a literal functional greenhouse attached to your home, your bathroom is likely the most humid room in your home. Daily showers and a smaller contained space compared to many other rooms in your home is going to keep that humidity higher. In fact, I do keep hydrometers all around my home, and the average humidity of my bathroom is roughly 10% higher than any other room throughout my home. So that being said, you're probably going to be recommended plants that prefer higher humidity or increased humidity if you are going into a local garden center and asking an employee what plants they would recommend for your bathroom. So one of the ones that I would definitely recommend if someone came in to the plant shop where I work would be ferns, as ferns tend to enjoy higher humidity. So this fern right here is a bird's nest fern, and I'm pretty particular about the ferns that I sell in the store where I work, just because ferns tend to be a little bit more finicky. They are not very forgiving, I think is the best way to put it. If you forget about them or if you give them a little too much love, they tend to just kind of fall apart, which is not very enjoyable. So I'm a little bit particular, as I said, about the types of ferns that I sell in the store where I work. So some of the ferns that I find that grow really well for me are bird's nest ferns. So this one right here is an Asplenium nidus crispy wave, or a crispy wave fern is what they refer to it as. And this is a type of bird's nest fern. Aspleniums, the genus Aspleniums are bird's nest ferns, and these are rather low maintenance in my experience. They tend to handle neglect a little bit better than some other ferns, say a maidenhair fern, which is very fine-leaved and will not handle neglect in the slightest. But this one, if it's neglected a little bit, I find that the leaves go a little translucent and pale, and upon watering, they pop right back up and get that crisp green look to them once again. These bird's nest ferns are excellent options if you're dealing with a lower light bathroom, and may I mention that this is pretty much going to go for this whole entire video, but you're going to need a window in your bathroom or supplemented artificial lighting, a plant light or grow light if you're going to grow plants in your bathroom. I know some people are stricken with a windowless bathroom, which is very unfortunate, but if you're dealing with a lower light bathroom, this Asplenium crispy wave would be really good for those conditions, as I find those bird's nest ferns handle lower light very well. You'll notice that I have this one mounted on a piece of wood here with moss, as ferns are epiphytes, which means that they grow on other surfaces in nature. So these bird's nest ferns grow on trees in nature. That's why I think it just looks a little bit better growing on this piece of wood, and it's also a great space saver for me in my home. If you're dealing with a little bit of a higher light bathroom, I would highly recommend a footed fern. So one of the footed ferns that I grow in my home is this PHLEBODIUM aureum, which is commonly referred to as the blue star fern. And as you can see, this has some really bright blue, bluish green pale color to the leaves. Now this is a fern right here. This can handle a lot of light compared to many other ferns. If you do research on ferns, you're going to find that most of them are considered low light plants. And while they can handle low light very well, I feel like this blue star fern is one in particular that prefers brighter light. It's probably due to the color of the leaves with its paler blue color that it can handle sun a little bit better. I actually grow this one in my southern facing window, which is probably a little bit too much light, as you can see with a little bit of this sun scarring right here on the leaves. But this is a very resilient fern. This one and other footed ferns tend to handle drought much better than, say, a Boston fern or a maidenhair fern, which, as I said, do not handle neglect very well. So the two ferns that I'm sharing with you guys today can handle a little bit of drought, but not too much. A few other options of footed ferns would be the rabbit's foot fern and the kangaroo paw fern, which are both excellent options if I do say so myself. I used to consider myself a fern killer. I was never having very good luck with ferns, but I was trying to grow ferns like Boston ferns and lemon button ferns, which are just very fine-leaved, and as I've said multiple times already, they just cannot handle any neglect. So these two ferns in particular, this Asplenium nidus crispy wave or crispy wave fern and this PHLEBODIUM aureum or blue star fern, I think are much better options as far as ferns go if you're looking to grow some ferns in your home. Another type of houseplant that I always recommend for growing in bathrooms are asparagus. So this one right here in specific is an Asparagus retrofractus, and I think they refer to this as the Ming asparagus fern commonly. And as the name suggests, asparagus fern, these are much more closely related to asparagus like we eat than fern. So they're just a fern-like asparagus plant, which is why they have coined the name asparagus fern. So much more closely related to asparagus than ferns. This is a bright light plant. So this would be more equated to like the blue star fern that I had just spoken about. So this is a plant that would be great for a bright windowsill in the bathroom, as these really appreciate that added humidity that a bathroom gives, but they also will really appreciate the extra sunlight that a windowsill would provide. This is a very forgiving houseplant in my experience, as I find that it doesn't mind a little bit of extra water and it can handle a little bit of neglect. But if you go too far on either end of the spectrum, I find that these little needles or leaflets, I guess, I don't know how to refer to it, they tend to turn yellow and fall off, and then they can create quite the mess. So just something to keep an eye out for, but I think you have to go pretty far on either end of like watering it like every few days or not watering it at all for a few weeks before it gets to that point. Over time, they do shed a few of their branches, so a few branches, lower ones I find, do turn yellow over time, and you can just snip those off at the base if you don't want them obstructing the beautiful green lushness of your plant. So just a tip right there. But I really love specifically the way the new growth comes in on these plants. They kind of present themselves like fireworks, the way that they just kind of open up and are much lighter in color compared to the older growth. So over time, this is brand new growth right here that just opened up in the past few days. So over the next week or so, this is going to fade back to the deeper green just as the rest of the plant is. But such incredible plants. There's a bunch of other types of asparagus that are sold on the market. This one is just one that I really appreciate for its just overall vibe. It's got a really lush, kind of more northeastern vibe compared to some of the tropical plants. So I think this is a perfect plant for the bathroom. Another group of plants I would highly recommend trying out in your bathroom are Peperomia. So this right here is the Peperomia ARGYREIA, or watermelon peperomia, that I grow in my bathroom in an east-facing windowsill. And you might actually notice a little bit of browning on some of the leaves, this one right here in particular, and that's because this plant really loves to reach toward the light. As you can see, if I turn this plant around, how all the leaves are facing the other direction. And as the leaves begin to press up against the windows, they can get a little bit of cold damage from these very cold winter nights that we have here in Philadelphia. So this plant, as I said, I need to be a little bit mindful about the way it reaches over towards the light and turn it a little bit more. Peperomia as a genus overall, they are tropical succulents, so they are really fond of that higher humidity, as most of them are growing in South America in the rainforests. That being said, that they are tropical succulents, they do not want to be overwatered, so while they do really appreciate the added humidity from the bathroom, they do not want to be overwatered. So I'm probably only watering this Peperomia ARGYREIA roughly every 10 to 14 days. In fact, it does a really good job telling me when it needs water, when this plant gets just a tad bit droopy, and I can kind of feel that the leaves have lost their succulence. I do have this Peperomia ARGYREIA actually just sitting inside its plastic pot inside this planter right here. I find that they don't handle being repotted very well. So if you have struggled with watermelon peperomia in the past, maybe perhaps experiment with keeping it in the plastic nursery pot that you had purchased it in. But this is just such a fantastic peperomia and plant for your bathroom. I've had some really good luck growing this plant in my bathroom over the last year or so. So I would highly recommend this plant in particular for your bathroom. Another peperomia that I would highly recommend for a more humid environment is one that I don't actually see talked about that often. This right here is a Peperomia TRINERVIS, and I think this is such an incredible peperomia, as you can see from the way it has grown for me over the last year or year and a half. So this one, I actually have really enjoyed it over the time I've grown it. I just recently potted it up and added another little plant in the back here, expecting it to kind of just continue to drape over like this one does over time. So you'll notice a little bit of different growth with these ones that have grown for me in my home compared to the little bit of larger leaves in the back for the plant that had been grown in the greenhouse that I just more recently had brought into my home. But this Peperomia TRINERVIS really does appreciate the extra humidity. I believe this is more of a peperomia that would kind of scramble across the forest floor or whatever surface it's growing on, as many peperomia are more epiphytic in nature, and they kind of grow on like fallen trees and like little crags in the bark and stuff like that. So this is such a little funky plant. This peperomia is a little bit more harder to find than the Peperomia ARGYREIA, but it's just as easy to grow, if not easier in my own experience. So I did definitely want to point this one out if you're looking for a fun peperomia to grow in your bathroom space. Something else I think would be perfect for the bathroom are air plants, or Tillandsia. So this one right here is a Tillandsia IONANTHA, and this is probably one of the most common and inexpensive air plants that you would find on the market. So these are rather easy air plants to grow, and fortunately they are very inexpensive, as I said, in case you do kill them. I often hear people come into the store and tell me they kill their air plants, and let's just discuss a few things that could perhaps be going wrong in case you are in the same boat as the people coming into the store as me. But air plants, they do require light. I think that these things are so alien to us that sometimes we don't treat them as living beings. So they do require a watering once a week. I do give mine a spray with the spray bottle, like a really heavy spray, and then I'll give them a little bit of a shake and set them upside down to dry, so that I don't get the water stuck in the crevices. And if I can, I use filtered or distilled water because I know they don't exactly love all of the ingredients in our tap water. So that's something I would recommend doing. And I wouldn't necessarily soak them. I'm sure many of you have had very good success with your air plants soaking them. I just find at home and at the store where I work that if I soak them, they just seem more likely to rot. So just something to keep in mind. Like I said, I'm sure some of you have had different experiences, but I just find the spray bottle to be the best method to go as for watering these plants. As for light, like I said, they are living plants, so they do require light to a point. I kind of go off the rule of thumb that the greener the air plant, the less light it can handle, and the whiter the air plant, the more light it requires. So this Tillandsia IONANTHA, I'd say, can probably successfully grow up to 6 feet away from a window, depending on the window that you have. So if you're working with like a south or west facing window, up to 6 feet, I'd say would be the furthest you can go. But if you're working with a north or east facing window, I'd say you might want to put this in or very close to the window to give it adequate light. So like I said, these do require light. I always tell people in the store where I work that these grow underneath trees. So imagine you're sitting underneath a tree. That's the kind of light that these would prefer. So if you think that the light you're giving it is adequate to sitting underneath a tree, I think you're probably doing a good enough job, keeping in mind that the light that we have in our homes is always going to be less than light outside of our homes. As I had mentioned that your bathroom is likely going to be the most humid space in your home, people might often recommend that you try a prayer plant in your bathroom, as they are known for being a group of plants that requires high humidity. However, since they tend to be a little bit of a fussy group of plants, I usually do not recommend them to beginner gardeners. However, there is one group of prayer plants that I always recommend because I think that they are such a reliable grower, and that is Ctenanthes. So this right here is a Ctenanthe BURLE-MARXII, and this is a cultivar of Ctenanthe BURLE-MARXII called AMAGRIS. And I should say that these are often sold on the market as calatheas or calatheas, so you might see this sold as a calathea on online or at your local garden center, so just something to be wary of. But if I didn't say, this is commonly referred to as the fishbone prayer plant, and prayer plants, as I had mentioned, tend to be a more finicky group of houseplants, but these Ctenanthes I find are very reliable growers. These are excellent low light plants. This is actually one of the plants I have growing deepest in my home, so one of the plants in the darkest areas, and I find it just withstands that really well and even puts off a bunch of new growth for me, as you can see right here. The one thing I would say about prayer plants is that they are known for being a little bit, as I said, fussy overall, but they are a little bit needy when it comes to their type of water. They prefer distilled or filtered water, as they don't care for a lot of the things that are in our tap water, such as chlorine and fluoride. So I would recommend using distilled or filtered water. However, I do water mine with tap water, and I've had it for between 6 months and a year, and I have barely any brown tips. So I find Ctenanthes are much more resilient than, say, a Stromanthe triostar, which would get brown tips quite quickly. If you've heard about prayer plants, you've probably heard about the dance that their leaves do throughout the day. So during the daytime, their leaves tend to be facing downwards or flat, as showing off the top side of the leaves. And then throughout the day, later in the afternoon, the leaves tend to start to fold upwards as if they're in prayer, hence the name prayer plant, and show off the purple undersides of the leaves, or whatever underside they have, as prayer plants have many colors to them. This one in particular just has a purple underside, which I think looks excellent with the paler green the upper side of the leaf. I don't know how to refer to it as, but this is such an incredible plant. I really enjoy the look of it. I think it's a great plant, as I said, if you're looking for a lower light plant for your bathroom space. So highly recommend Ctenanthes in particular if you're looking for a prayer plant for your bathroom. There are certainly moments at work where I am going over this list of good plants to grow in your bathroom with a customer when they break it to me that they do not have a window in their bathroom. And while you can grow any of these plants I talked about today with the addition of a grow light or plant light, if you're working with no windows and no light, there is typically only one plant that I feel comfortable enough to recommend to people, and that is the ZZ plant. So this right here is the ZAMIOCULCAS ZAMIIFOLIA Raven, or the black ZZ plant. And I should say, if you are actually looking to grow a ZZ plant in a windowless room, I would probably recommend going with the green variety, as those tend to cost much less than this black variety that I have right here. I just wanted to share this one with you guys today because this is the variety that tends to be a little bit more popular on the market at the moment. But ZZ plants withstand very, very low light conditions. In fact, as I said, they're the only plant that I find that can handle a room with no light. I actually, many years ago, lived in a renovated warehouse building that had bedrooms with no windows in it. And I had a ZZ plant in my bedroom, and I found that was the only plant that was actually able to live in there throughout my time there. I found, however, when you are dealing with a ZZ plant in a room with no windows, the secret to them is to water them no more than you pay your rent. And I say that about ZZ plants a lot, however, that really comes into play if you are growing this plant in a windowless room. I'm sure if you are growing your ZZ plants in a bright area that they could totally be happy with a watering every 2 or 3 weeks. But as I said, if you're doing this plant in a windowless room, if you're watering it more than you're paying your rent, it's too much. So a ZZ plant in a windowless room needs minimal amounts of water to survive. If you've grown these plants, you probably know about their little tubers that they have, these little potato-like tubers that these stalks actually grow out of. So they store a lot of water in there. And if you give these plants a little bit too much water, they tend to rot pretty quickly, which is why it would be really best to err on underwatering. In fact, if you put this ZZ plant in a windowless room and water it, say, once a week, I think this thing would rot on you within just a few weeks. It would be very quick to rot, and these little potatoes thingies in the soil would definitely just kind of mush and kind of just break down into nothing, if I'm not mistaken. So definitely be wary there. But if you're looking to grow a plant in your very low light bathroom or your windowless bathroom, a ZZ plant would really be the only plant I recommend. Just as I said, if you water it more than you pay your rent, it's too much. Alrighty, that's gonna about do it for today's video. Thank you guys so much for joining me today to talk about my personal picks for the best bathroom plants. If I missed a plant that you think would be great for a bathroom, please let me know in the comments. Otherwise, thank you again for watching. If you don't already, follow me on Instagram at PHLEBODIUM, subscribe to my channel, and I will see you guys in my next video. Have a great day!